So in this video I want to show how to create a spectator, and I actually tested this with my friends too on Steam. So for example, right now I have 3 players and this is a first person game, and we will make it so that the spectating is in third person, so that we don't have to sync the first person view and all. We only have to sync like whatever it's already present around here. So right now this is the players. I'm going to go, this is the server that I'm playing right now. Let me get my ammo and let's see. I destroy this guy, and you could see suddenly this guy is now around here. It is spectating me, you can see, and he can also spectate other player by pressing 2, and now he's spectating this guy, and he can just move around this guy like this, move up and down to kind of sync with him, you can see. And obviously it will only move on the alive players like this. So for example, if I do 4, so the big one is the server. Let's do this one and then kill this guy. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I need to get ammo. By the way, this is from a game that I'm making. So which player was it? I don't know which. Okay, this guy. Right, and you could see this is the one that I'm spectating. 1, 2, 3. It is now moving on 3 players. So let's now stop one more player, like kill one more player. Let's just do randomly. Okay, so now you can see it only moves around 2 players. And then which one was it? So this guy was killed, so you can see only moves around 2 players. So if I do 1, it goes to the previous one. If I do 2, it goes to the next one. Again, there are only 2, so it looks normal, but you could see. So let's create a new project, and you can get this file from my Patreon for the membership users. It's a new Patreon, so there isn't much, but again I will be providing all my files there, and that way you can support me too. I will be using first person, and let's call it like spectator tutorial. So again, you can get this from my Patreon if you want to get the files, or you can watch this video to make it yourself. So this is just a basic first person map. You can see if I do 2 players, go to listen server, and we got like 2 players. Okay, so first thing first, we need to make sure that our player can be destroyed. So let's go to a first person character. This is what's been used. Let's go and create an event, custom event. Let's call it death server. Okay, because this would only run on server, and because our character is already replicated, you can see that it is tick mark. As soon as we destroy this, it will also destroy for other actors. So for example, this one, and it is set to run on server. Let's create a respawn button or a death button. Basically, for you guys it might be like when you do damage and all that stuff. So let's go to actions, because this is the one that Unreal is using right now, the IMC. Let's go and create input action IA underscore like death. Okay, or whatever, anything that you want. It's going to be type bull, you can see, because it's just one key. And if I press Ctrl P, I can quickly get my any asset. It's a faster way to actually get anything that we want, that is pressing Ctrl P, instead of finding like all the files and going into this, where is it, like here, blueprint, going into the controller like this and all. And we can see that if you go to event graph, we can see that if it's local player, if you don't know about multiplayer architecture, then you should know that the host has like every copy of player controller. So if there are 4 players, then the host would have 4 player controllers, 1 would be itself and 3 would be the copy of the other players. But for the second player on any client, right, they would only have their own controller and not the copy of every other controller. Okay, which is why there's an local player controller added in here, so that this code is only applied once to the host. Because if you don't add this pin, it's added by default in here, but if you don't add this, then what would happen is that this code would run 4 times if there are 4 players, because there are 4 player controller. Clients would only have it once because there's only one, but for player it would be like multiple. So again, let's just go to the regular input mappings. You can see it is added around here. If I click on here, it takes me to the IMC default, which we were already there, and these are all the controls that have been added. So let's just add our depth, and let's give it a key. I do P. Then in our player controller, if I do I underscore depth, I can basically just run this code on started. Let's do is, now if I go in here and press, let's say P, it has disappeared. If I P again, it would be disappeared too. So let me just open this one PyEditor instead, and you can see that this is the server. If I do P, he also disappears, and you can see that we cannot see that player anymore. So whenever there's a death event, we can basically start our spectate logic. It's also good to make this reliable, because we have to make sure that this runs, right? If it was something basic like UI and all, we don't need to make it reliable. But if it's something like death and spectate logic, we need to make it reliable so that it reaches. In case it fails, it will keep trying. Now what I want to do is, I will first create a blueprint which would be an actor, which would be attached to the other players. So let me explain this. So let me add a blueprint first. Let's add a color to this so that we know which one it is. Okay, if I go in here, and then let's create new one and call it like spectator pawn. Okay, let's go in here and add a blueprint class. If you guys don't know what this is, basically a pawn is a type of actor, a character is a type of pawn, but the pawn is also a type of actor, which means that character is also an actor, a pawn is also an actor. But basically, if you check the architecture of Unreal Engine and how it's made, you would understand that. And you could say it's an actor that can be possessed and receive input from a controller. We want that because we want it to move left and right when we are spawning or when we are spectating. And the character is a type of pawn, so it's a type of pawn. Okay, it's very basic. If you check the architecture, it would be easy to understand, but I'm going to call it spectator pawn. Okay, and make sure you select this one, okay, because we want to control it. In here, I'm going to add a spring arm. This is spring arm, and then in here we will also add a camera. Okay, and the camera is inside this, okay, so that it automatically adds to the end of it. So you can control it with this target length and all, how much far it is, if you want to like do some difference like this and all. Okay, so for testing purposes, let's add this in the level like this, and let's go to our world settings. If you don't see any windows that I'm clicking around here, just go in Windows and search for the name. Okay, so world settings. In the game mode, it's already using this, so we can actually override it for temporary purposes, which is default pawn class, which is going to be the first person character. Oh, sorry, spectator pawn. So if I do play now, it's basically going to be like this. We don't need to actually add it in here, but you could see that both of them have been added, because now this is getting spawned instead of the character. This is just for testing purposes. So let's check around here. Now I cannot move this around. If I click on it, I'm not able to move it around, because if you check your player character and if you go up, you would find something called eye mouse look, and there is also eye look. And this is basically for, I think, gamepad and all, like the controller and all. This is for the mouse, and I'm doing for PC, so I'm going to temporarily use this. So I'm just going to copy this eye mouse look and add it into our spectator pawn and spawn it around here like this. And here I'll do create matching function, so that it creates this function around here. Now when I was doing it myself, this This step I spent like so much time to kind of figure out why it was not working, and the reason why it was not working is that this one has nothing in here. So even though we copied this, it didn't really copy anything that was inside this aim function like this. So let's copy inside of this and add the function around here. Okay, now let's try doing play and nothing happens. That is because we need to enable one more feature. Just go in here, in the spring arm, and choose use pawn control rotation. Let's do compile and see now I'm able to move around in both these ones like this. You could see because this event is getting triggered around here. Now you might be wondering like how is IA mouse look working even though we didn't add any IMC around here, like the context around here, which is like this default context. Well, the thing is this player controller is the one that has been adding this IMC default, and this player controller is the same. You would say it's the player controller which has this instead of inside of this. Okay, which means that as long as the player controller has this, it will also work for any other actor, any other thing that you want. But if you want to manually do it, you could also add an IMC mapping context and all that stuff. Okay, and one more thing, if I let's say add a cube in center. Okay, I'm going to add a cube in center and make it smaller. You would see that we now rotate around it because this is how the spectator logic should be, right? This is going to be the player and we are going to be able to move around it. So let's just delete the cube and let's now make it back to the default one. Okay, so what was it? First person character. So now we should be able to get the first person character. There we go. In our first person character, let's go down on death. Okay, on death, before we destroy it, we'll do some events. Okay, let's just disable this. The first thing we'll do is we will spawn our camera. Okay, spawn actor from class, and it would be the camera, spectator camera or whatever it was, spectator pawn. Okay, if I do compile now, it would not work because this needs to have something. But if you do split, it is going to be 0 0 0 and it will be spawning it at this location, which is the world origin. It doesn't matter because we will be attaching it later, so we can keep it default like this. Now one more thing is when you use like spawn actor and add a class around here, if you go to the blueprint character now, where is it? First person blueprint, and if you do the size map, I think it's not, let's do memory size. I don't know if it's going to be visible in here, but it's going to be like very small. If you do like reference viewer, you could see it's now creating a hard reference, which is okay for like something so small because this is going to be like very small. You could see if you go in here, size map, it's only 12 KB, so it's not going to be like that big of a deal even if this gets added in your memory. What we need to do is next is to possess this character. So this is our player controller, right? So if we get our player controller, which is if we get the self reference, so whichever we are, whoever we are, self reference, we can do get controller like this, and this will give a controller object reference. And before we even do this, let's just try one more step and let's see if it works. Okay, directly. So I'll do get controller. Let's do get controller, returns the controller of this actor, and then let's do possess this new character that we just spawned. Okay, so let's try this. If I now press P, I spawned in the ground and I'm able to control it. You can see. For time being, let's just add the cube back because it was confusing to check it. Let's add the cube for time being. Let's try again. It's not getting added perfectly, I think. I'm just going to spawn it like up a bit, like 500, and let's see. Yep, there we go. So we can see this is how it's going to look, and we are able to now control it, and our character is still there. But again, I'm pressing WSD, it doesn't really work because all the controls are actually in here in the player controller. You could see like IA move, IA jump. So because we are not possessing this anymore, because right now we are possessing the new character, right? Whichever we spawned, it's not going to work. This is not going to work, all of this stuff, okay? Because it's in the character and we do not have the control of it. And if I do for both of them would do the same thing, okay? Let's just try with the second one first. There, okay, it works too. And once we have possessed the new one, we can destroy the actor like this. So let's do this. Now let's go to our pp underscore player pawn, and now I want to do something called attach to other actor. Okay, so I'll add an event in here which would be attach to player. Okay, this one would also run on server, and what we can do is we will use something called attach actor to actor. So basically we can attach self, so we can do self reference. It's automatically added, but let's just add it ourselves too if you want. And then the parent actor is going to be the player controller. So for temporary purpose, let's do get player character, and let's see if I do 1. Okay, so 1, and I attach it around here, parent actor. And for the socket, what I can do is I can get my player character. If I go to, let's say, in my player character, in my mesh, this skeletal mesh, if I do check all the bones, so like all hierarchy, this one is going to be the head bone. Okay, you could see head, it's called head. So we can just copy this, copy bone names, and then paste it around here, or you could just type it properly like head, so that when it gets attached, it attaches to this socket. And the location rule should be snap to target, which means that when the player moves, it would be attached to this location always. We don't want rotation because we want to move it and we don't care about scale. So this is the only one that needs to be controlled. And let's go to event begin play like this. So as soon as this gets spawned, we can run this code attached to player, and let's see. So I'm playing right now, and if I press P, it is working. It's mainly because this one has like a collision enabled for temporary. Let me just delete the cube, we don't want the collision. If I do, let's say, P right now, and if I move, you can see I'm able to move right now like this. There's one issue. You can see that the camera is at a wrong location. So let's go into a spring arm and let's remove the do collision test for now, and let's see. And you can see we are now able to do this, and you can see a bit lagginess happening with the player, and you can fix this very easily. Go into spring arm, search for lag, and enable camera lag, and I like to set it to be a bit lower. This would basically make the following a bit laggier. I don't know what laggier, interpolation basically. There would be an interpolation between, and that would look a bit smooth. You could say it does not follow instantly, it like glides a bit slow up and down instead of directly following. And obviously if you try this on this one, I don't think it would work. You could say it would not work because we are using where did it go? I accidentally deleted, not deleted, removed it. So here we are selecting get player character 1, and it always runs on the server, which means that the first player would always be same for the server. He would be 0, 1 would be the second player, and we don't want that. So let's remove it and let's start doing one thing. Okay, so let's go to the game mode. So where is it? So we have a game mode in here. Okay, if I double click on it, it uses game mode base, which is actually not good for a multiplayer from what I know. So let's just create ourselves a blueprint game mode and search for game mode, and just search this one, game mode. By default, game mode base is good for single player, but game mode is good for multiplayer. And let's do bpgm and then spectator game mode or something like this. Okay, if I double click in here, we need to now set all the characters and all. So this one would be our first person controller. This one would be the first person character, and everything else is like same, so it doesn't matter. And now it should still work properly. So here's what we will do. Okay, so I could do get game state, and game state is the one that has so game state actually has the player array. So if we go in here and do player array, we can get the player array. Even if you created your own game state by going into blueprint, creating your own game state, which you would probably do, I think, if you're doing multiplayer, like this game state, this one would still work, okay, because this is like the parent of that class. Whenever you click that, you basically create a child of this game state. So for example, right now you could see the parent class is pawn. So whenever we do a blueprint and click pawn, we basically create a child of it. So if there is anything in here in game state, we can just get it without having to do any casting and all. Let's create a variable called current player and make it integer like this. Let's add this. So if you hold control and drag it, it would be get, and if you hold alt, it would be set. Instead of selecting this, we'll do get a copy and add it around here. Now for time being, let's just attach it directly without any changes. So you would see that this one would, if I do P, this one would not work, but if I do P in here, well, we should first only do for one of it. So for client, if I do P, it's going to be around here like this, weird. But that is because right now this one is getting player array. You would see this is getting a player state object reference. We don't want to connect it there. We actually want the character. So let's get pawn. Okay, so whichever is this one, it will get this and add the player character. So if I do this one, it would not work because I know that right now, because we are using 0, right? And this one would work because if I go in here, it would get connected to the 0 player, which is the host. So for time being, let's just keep it like this, and let's create the new sections which is attached to like new player. If I do custom event and do attach to next player like this, we'll obviously run this on server. Let's get this game state again like this. Let's get our current player, and what we'll do is we will do plus plus like this, which is basically incrementing this. Okay, so it will go from 0 to 1 and all that stuff. And what I also do, I'll also set it. Okay, so it's good to do set around here because I want to use it in front too. Now I can select this current player like this and run this event again, which is attach to player. So once we have done plus plus, we can do attach to player. So we can just do this much. Okay, we do not need more. We basically do plus plus and then we run this code again, which is attached to player, get player array, current player, get pawn, and then do this. Okay, let's create another event and do attach to previous player. This would also run on server. Let's copy this much like this, and let's do negative negative, which basically is -1. Okay, this is +1 and this is -1, and set this as a new variable. Now one more issue is because it's plus plus, it can keep going like 0 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 like continuously. We actually need to make sure that it doesn't go above our player controls or above our player arrays. So if we go in here, get a player array, for example, if we have 4 players, it would have 4 of them. Okay, so let's search for last index. So what this would give us is, if our array has 4 players, it would start from 0, right? So it would be 0 1 2 3. So the last one would be 3 if there are 4 players, and our current player also starts with 0, so it's okay. And we will check this if it is greater than or equal to. Okay, just for safety, we'll also add greater than or equal to. Let's do branch. If this is greater than and equal to, then what we'll do is simply make this current player to be 0 again. So whenever we increase it, it would go 0 to 1, and then it would be like, okay, it is not a last index, so keep going forward. If it's 2, 3, and as soon as it reaches 3, it would be like, okay, the last index and this current player matches. Actually, I forgot to add this. Okay, let's add a current player around here. So if our current player is bigger than this last index or equal to, we basically set it to 0 back. Okay, so it will keep looping like 0 1 2 3 0 1 2 3 0 1 2 3, and on false also we will also do attach to player. Okay, now let's copy this much again around here, and this is minus minus, right? So we don't want it to go below 0, so we'll not take the last index. Obviously we'll check if this gets 0, if it gets less than 0, or not equal to, just less than. Okay, because because our player can be 0, but if it gets less than 0, which is -1 -2 and all that stuff, we will set our current player to the last index of this one. Okay, last index of this one. So let's get our current player and set this as the last index. So what it means is that if we go from, let's say, 4 players, right? So it's 0 1 2 3, right? So we'll go from 3 2 1 0, and when it reaches -1, it would be true. It would basically be like, okay, -1 basically means that we have to go reach to last index, which is going to be 3. So this one would be 3 back. Okay, let's select this event, attach to next player, let's do play, and let's add it. So it's very basic right now. We are just adding and just checking if it is like bigger than the player range, or if it's lower than 0, and then we make it back to the highest index around here. Now we want to have something that would allow us to attach to next player, right? So let's go to our spectator, not in here, in our first person, input action, and let's create 2 input actions, which would be I underscore spectate prev, like this. Let's copy this and name it I underscore spectate next. Let's go to our default and let's add both of our mapping. So this one is spectate next, which I'll add on 2. Let's add our spectate previous, which I'll add on 1. I'll just organize it so the 1 is at like previous next. So let's go in here and now select IA spectate previous. This one would basically be called attach to previous player, and let's do I spectate next attach to next player. Okay, there we go. Now this would work, but there's another issue too, so that I want to show first. So let's do 3 players. So I'm moving, I press P, and it's connected to myself, but if I press 1, you can see it goes back. But you could see that right now I'm pressing 1, I'm pressing 1 again, I'm pressing 2 again, 2 2 2 2 2, it's not working properly. Okay, and you could see we actually get some errors, cannot attach to itself, aborting. Because what's actually happening is this player array also has ourself too, and what it means is that instead of just getting the alive players, it is also getting ourself and also the players who are spectating others. Because sometimes what we are going to get is we are going to get a player and we are going to get the pawn, and that's going to be this one, spectator pawn. For example, one of your friend is spectating your friend, and he's using a spectator pawn to spectate, right? So when we do and get to his range, we are going to get this player's pawn, like we are going to get the spectator pawn, and we are going to start spectating the spectator, and we don't want that. So we need to actually do one more test. Okay, and I'm going to create a function for it because I don't want to make this like very huge. I'm going to create a function and we'll call it like check if is player. Okay, check if this is a player. And what we'll do is we will copy this much. Okay, so get game state, player array, current player, get, and then get pawn. And I'll add it around here like this because we want to check if the pawn is actually a player or not. And how we can do it? In a simpler way called hashtag. Does the actor has a tag, and I'm just going to name it player like this. So if the actor has this player, which means it's an actual first person alive character, and we have to actually add this tag ourselves too. So let's first do a branch. Actually no branch, we will do return, and we will just send this value. So we will basically get true or false based on this actor. Okay, and now if we go to the event graph, and if I tag my check if it is player, check if player, let's name it check if player, which is better. Okay, check if player, we will get this, which would tell us whether it's a player or not, and it will basically run this. Okay, so before we do attach to player, we will check around here. Okay, so we'll check if it's a player or not. Let's create a branch on this one. If it is a player, we can do attach to player. Okay, if it is a player, then we'll do attach to player, but if it is not, we'll basically run this again. So let's say we press 2 to get to next player, it would do plus plus. So it will, let's say, go from 0 to 1. It will do all of this stuff, and if it's a player, it will attach it, but if it's not, it will do another plus plus. So it will go from 0 to 1 to instantly go to 2. It will go around here, then it will go 3 until it finds a player. Okay, and we'll do the same around here. So let's go front. Let's do check if it's a player. Oops. Check if it's in player like this. If it's in player, we attach it. If it's not, we will do previous again. So let's do attach to previous player. So we are just doing nothing, but it will just go from 0, 1, 2. So let's say if the first player is dead in the array index, it will just go from 0 to 2 instantly, instead of checking, instead of like trying to connect there. Now it's not going to work because we haven't really added this tag to the player. So if you go to the player character, go to the self, search for tag, and we'll say that this is actually the player. Okay, which means that this would only be true if it's a first person character. And now if I go in here, if I let's say die, it kind of gets stick to me, but I'll go 1 1. You could say I can just go back and forth very easily. I don't know why 2 is not working. Let's just check quickly. My bad guys, I accidentally made this equal to. We don't want to do that because then we would never be able to spectate the last player. So let's just do greater than around here, and we'll check if this one is greater than this one. Okay, we do not do equal to. That was stupid of me. Let's just do play. If I do P now, 2, you could see it works properly. If I do 1, it works properly, and I'm able to spectate this guy, which is this guy. You could see I'm able to now spectate it. Even if I drag it, I'm able to move it up and down. You can create another collision channel too. So I haven't done that, but you could see there's something called to collision test, and then you will need to create another collision channel so that you cannot like put your camera inside these walls when you're spectating. I don't know why this other character keeps spawning inside the wall. There we go. Okay, so let's say if I let's do 4 players so that we know it works properly. 4 player. So this is the server. I'm able to move it. If I do P, it takes me around here, but then you could actually spectate. So for example, I can spectate right now this guy. Okay, so you can see, and I can move it around there. Now let's say if I kill this guy too, I did P, and now I can just move around to this two of these guys, you can see. And if I go around here, you can see now I'm only moving in both of these guys. If I press 2, if I press 1, and then if I, let's say, 2P again, now he would not be able to move anywhere because it's a single player. So we get this properly. Some stuff that you could do is you could add like is valid check and all to make it even better. So if you want to get this file, I will leave it in the links in the Patreon. And yeah, that's all. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.